Welcome back to the Cape Copcast. Thank you so much for being with us today. We are the official podcast of the Cape Coral Police Department. I'm Lisa Greenberg. I'm one of the public affairs officers here.
And I'm Mercedes Simons. Together we make up the public affairs team here. We were tasked with a podcast for the police department. So today we have Sergeant Wallace with us. You've been on the department for how long?
Going on 18 years now.
Wow.
18.
Yeah, almost. When I got hired on, I went straight into our internal training program and then out to patrol. I worked day shift for a little while and I worked night shift for like 6 years.
Wow.
And then I got tapped to come up to help with a special project in the chief suite and didn't leave for several years. They moved me into a planning and research officer position. So I did a bunch of administrative strategic planning and tracking behind the scenes kind of stuff and activity, doing everybody's homework.
What was the special project they brought you up for?
It was something to do with traffic enforcement. That's always kind of a hot button topic here in Cape Coral. Seems like we can never do enough. No matter how much we actually do, it's never enough.
We did a whole podcast on it.
We did.
I believe it, yes.
If you haven't listened, go back to the first episode we did with the chief. It talks all about traffic. So if you think we're not doing anything, that episode will definitely prove you wrong. Okay, so you did a traffic project. You've done planning and research. You're still kind of in that area, right?
Sort of. While the planning and research officer, I had the opportunity to participate in a promotional process and ended up making sergeant. I got promoted. They sent me down to our investigative services bureau, which is where I'm at now, and put me in charge of essentially a new unit. And I kept a lot of the planning and research responsibilities that I had and took it with me, and then incorporated that into the crime analysis and intelligence stuff that my new unit does.
Right. So, okay. We have the TIAC Center. The TIAC, I'm always going to mess up the acronym. What does TIAC stand for?
The TIAC is the acronym we've given to the actual physical room, and it's the Tactical Intelligence and Analytics Center.
And in this room, it's really cool. You have a massive amount of technology from, whatever calls for service we have going on, traffic cameras. What else is there?
We took the idea of a real-time crime center as kind of our end goal, and we're still probably a few years away from that. A huge investment in time, money, and people to get to a real-time crime center.
Yeah.
But we had nothing, right? We had a couple of crime analysts if we were lucky. Some years we only had one. So using the real-time crime center concept as a model, we started working that direction. So we did some construction to make the physical space a little more conducive to that kind of work. We added a bunch of different computers and TV screens on the wall so that we can display all of our existing technologies, the computer-aided dispatch and records management system that the officers already use. We can now see on the big screens, just like a dispatcher or the officer. But then we've been adding technology that makes sense where we can. Obviously, we're trying to be cost-effective and smart about what we're doing and employing that so our analysts and our personnel can be more effective. So we've incorporated more cameras, for instance, right? So now instead of just being able to watch the city cameras, like at the police department, fire departments, parks, we have access to Department of Transportation cameras, so we can see intersections and roads all over the place. We've made partnerships with other groups, such as the Lee County School System. So now we have the ability to tap into their camera systems when needed. And we're constantly adding more. We've incorporated some new technology, bought some trailers, right? We have a couple of cameras on a trailer, so we can move that around for special events and things that we can live view. We added some new body camera technology. We added in-car camera systems, and we can monitor those from the TIAC as well.
Yeah. Can you go over like a kind of a scenario if there's a major scene event, something going on? I know we have the ability to see body cams that are live. We can just transfer in and see basically what the officer sees through their body cam footage. But what's a scenario that like we would use the TIAC and kind of like live body cam footage to figure out what's going on? Sure.
There's a lot of scenarios that might work, but one that we used as kind of a target model would be dealing with the schools, right? School safety is a big deal. It's very important to us here at the department. We've invested a lot of time and energy into our school resource officer program and our relationship with the schools. And now the TIAC has the ability to activate, and I'll use that word loosely because we work every day, but most of the time the folks in the TIAC are just doing normal crime analysis work and we have daily routines and things. But if a major incident kicks off, say the threat of a school shooter, we can then switch gears to assisting the responding officers there. So as officers show up, the school resource officers there, patrol officers show up to help. Other personnel throughout the department might get tapped, SWAT team members, K-9 members, traffic unit members. Most of these folks have body cameras. In the TIAC, we can then activate and use that technology to our advantage. So specifically with body cameras and the new Axon in-car cameras, we can see on the Axon dashboard where those devices are on a map. We can see which ones are recording and available, highlight that specific device, and we can see a live view, including sound, if that device is equipped with sound like the body cameras are. Why that's valuable is picture this, right? There's personnel all over the place running around inside the schools. We're trying to figure out what's going on and what's there. My analyst and I can each be watching 2 or 3 cameras from different areas, combined with our ability to see the cameras in the school itself at that point, to keep track of where the officers are, where they've been, maybe where they need to go. If we do identify a real threat and we can see that on camera, we can then communicate directly to the officers. Hey, wait, stay where you are and wait for more officers to get to you before you go into the gym because they're in the gym waiting for you.
Yeah, that's what's really cool. You guys have access to so many different pieces of information that patrol officers who are actively engaging on scene might not have or might not think to use. So you guys can pull up the map of the school and figure out where the cafeteria is, what direction they need to take to get there.
It's kind of like an extra set of eyes and even ears in some cases too. And I think what's interesting is this type of technology can also be used for any special events, right? I'm thinking like a red, white, and boom type of thing.
Absolutely. And that's a fantastic example. It's a planned special event. We know ahead of time what roads are going to be closed off and who's going to be doing what and where all the parks and rec folks are going to be and where the band's going to play. And my team has the opportunity then to take advantage of that. We can mark off specific city cameras to monitor. We can deploy our own equipment, the trailer with the camera on it that I mentioned. We can, if we identify there's like a blank area or a dark area, we might call it, where there's no city cameras that we can see. Maybe we'll put our trailer there or our cameras in place so that we can see everything. And then my team can then be monitoring in real time what's going on down there. We have access to social media. We have access to the dispatchers and the call volume coming in. We can work with the city's 311 because people will contact or make complaints there. And we can help process a lot of information for the officers that are on the scene and help keep track of things. Think in terms of a missing kid, right? A family down there, one of their children wanders off, gets lost. Well, when you're in a crowd of people, like in Red, White, and Boom, 30, 40, 50,000 people or more, plus all the officers running around, it's really hard to see at that eye level. You can't see through people. You can't see around all of the food vendors and things.
Yep.
But if we have access to the cameras and we can get involved in that search for that missing child, maybe we can see something the officers can't. And then we can get on the radio, cell phones, whatever we need to do to help direct them to find that missing child. There's obviously other things, criminal investigation-wise, that we can do to support their activity as well, for officer safety, et cetera. And then we do intelligence as well out of the unit, not just crime analysis and this observation kind of a stuff. Say, for instance, with the recent bike nights we've had, right? We became aware of potential risks, certain personnel or people or gangs that might be attending these events. Well, in the days leading up to it, we were in intel mode, doing this research, talking to FDLE and Lee County and Fort Myers and all the other agencies around here to compare notes and learn whatever we could about the situation, identify who might be coming, what they look like, getting pictures of them, license plate numbers, whatever we could do. Well, we can send out bulletins, BOLOs, you might have heard the term in police world, be on the lookout for safety bulletins, et cetera. Well, the same people that are doing that research and creating those bulletins are now in the room watching live what's going on, and they know what they're looking for.
Right.
So again, an officer who's on the ground surrounded by a bunch of people who can't see through the crowd might be 8-10 feet away from a high-risk individual, a criminal who's there to do bad things.
Now, do you guys track social media accounts potentially and stuff like that? Say if there's a gang member that comes and there's threats that have been made on the internet, then you'd potentially have that picture to disseminate to everyone
Correct.
instantly in an email for everyone to see exactly who they're looking for.
Correct. And we can do that again with those BOLOs, like I mentioned. We can prepare those documents and share them with the officers are going to be working the event. As an officer who has worked those events and not in the role of an intel person, there might be a stack of things we're supposed to remember, right?
100%. And if you are the one who created the bulletins, you're more likely to know the ins and outs of that particular person, be able to recognize them better, have a better, deeper understanding of all the information that's needed, that you can relay that to the people on the ground. It's interesting.
Yeah, that's huge. I think especially over the last 10 years, I'd say that stuff has evolved a lot. I mean, you said you've been here for 18. You've probably developed most of what we're doing now over the last 10, honestly. People like 50 years from now will like watch this podcast and be like, wow, Sergeant Wallace is like there in the flesh and he's not old.
Should we rename it the Wallace TIAC
Oh, please no.
Center?
Please no.
These 4 Wallaces were created by me. I'm
Within
sorry.
these 4 Wallaces lies the TIAC.
Oh, you're killing me. Regardless of what work I've done, what effort I've put in to make things happen, I'm not alone. There's a lot of people that are not me that had to participate in this process to make it happen. I would like to think that my involvement has at least brought something of value to the department and made the lives of the analysts that work there and the detectives that we work with and the patrol officers that we support a little bit better and made them a little bit more efficient at their job. If we can claim 10%, I'll call that a win. Anything more than that is gravy, and that makes me happy, right? That's why I like to do these kinds of things. I don't want my name on a wall. That's ridiculous.
You can have
All
you
right,
can have at
fine.
least 2 walls, but no, I think it's more than 10%. I think it's going to end up making everyone's lives easier, like you said, but I think it could also save lives. I think that's the coolest part about that technology. Law enforcement exists to keep people safe, to monitor crime, and sometimes crime is obviously potentially violent, right? Like we talked about school shooters, and I think that's really when the more than 10% kicks in, is you recognize the depth of what all of that different technology can do. That's really cool.
Absolutely.
So how did you get to the sergeant spot? Were you just in kind of working in the analytics field and then they just kept you in place as a sergeant?
As officers, most of us like to move around a little bit, right?
Right.
We all start off in patrol, which is a generalist kind of a position, right? A good patrol officer can do a little bit of everything. But then some of us like, I want to go do traffic enforcement, or I want to go work in the schools, or I want to do investigations. We go do a couple of years of that, then it's like, I want to try something else. So most people do get some advanced training or experience, but they do continue to move around. I left patrol. I thought I'd spend 6 months on a temporary assignment on the 3rd floor helping out with something. And that morphed into a permanent position for several years. And then I've been the liaison to various city departments, including emergency management and developmental services and Department of Economic Development, a lot of it, right? I go to meetings, I participate in projects, and have been exposed to a lot of things going on here in the city. And as an officer, it's been a pretty crazy opportunity. It's things that I never thought I would be doing when I took the oath to be an officer.
Right.
Right.
It's not typical police work at all.
That's
Right.
what I say about her job too, is,
It's definitely not typical police
you
work.
go into a police work and you think you're going to be doing completely different things and out on the road and pulling people over or responding to a shooting or whatever it may be. You don't think of these types of jobs, which I think is good.
The fact is that these specialized and unique positions are all needed to keep a department like this moving forward, right? Over the years, I started doing more and more. I became more, I don't know if valuable is the right word, but definitely more ingrained in various processes here in this city, not just in the department. With the sergeant's test, the promotional process came along, and I took it, right? I wanted some growth and change. I mean, years ago, before I came up here, I thought I wanted to be a traffic homicide investigator. You know, I even took a couple of the classes. It's another complex kind of a job, very math intensive, physics intensive. But talking about solving a crime using math, that fascinates me.
I could see you being good at that too.
Yeah.
Well, I'll never know. My desire to continue to grow and experience and do different things is what kind of motivated me to take the sergeant's test. You know, apparently I passed and was on the list, and I think that may have sparked some discussion. What do we do, right? The timing was right for the TIAC and the change to that 2nd floor. And luckily for me, I guess it made sense that, okay, we'll make you a sergeant, and then you can go down and start doing some of the things that you've been helping us figure out and planning for. Oh, and by the way, you get to keep doing most of the things that you were doing up here as a planning officer. Also, all these other things down there, right? So for the past couple of years, that's kind of how it's worked. We're at a great time right now at Cape Coral Police Department, right? The city is growing like crazy with all of the pain that brings. But the department itself, I think, is better positioned, at least in my opinion, than it has been in many, many years. Our current executive and senior staff are much better motivated or equipped or willing to move the department positively, right? A lot of great decisions are coming. A lot of great plans are in place. A lot of much smarter growth has been put in place.
Yeah, no, they've been really innovative. That's actually one of our other podcast episodes that we did with the chief so far, is talking about, planning and the 4 quadrants and everything like that. And I'm sure you were very much so part of that process. It's not something that just happened overnight. You're not just involved in like the cop side of it. You're involved in the tech side of it, and we're switching over all of our mapping systems, and you have a hand in that too. So
there's a certain irony. Because I like to problem solve. I like to get involved in things. I like to be helpful. And I do, either by virtue of the position I've been given or sometimes just by personality. Like you say, we're changing over our entire IT infrastructure for the department, our new CAD RMS system, a new mapping system, new server farms, everything's new, right? And I'm part of the team that's doing that. But the city will do this every once in a while. It's an HR process, right? And they'll look at job descriptions through the city. What's your job description? What do we expect of you of your day-to-day activities? And that's how we're going to figure out how we're going to compensate, right? Well, in public safety, it's always been a little different to begin with. The job descriptions for an officer are pretty broad because
we wear a million hats.
Right. Putting it bluntly. You pick a handful of people in this department, right? What you're doing up here in public affairs and what I do and a few others, and you start writing down the bullets for what all the things we do, what's a part of our normal job description, and you start realizing that the public sector and the private sector equivalents to that are vastly different. So there's a certain irony that I think I've built a pretty interesting resume during my time here.
Oh, yeah.
If I ever do decide to retire and leave the department, maybe that'll open up a bunch of doors for me, but I'm not in any rush to leave the department yet. There's too many projects going on right now that I just couldn't walk away from because I want to see them succeed for the betterment of the department, because if this department is doing well and this department is succeeding, then the city is going to be doing well and succeeding. And at least for now, I live in this city and I want things to be good. I want things to succeed, right? So hopefully, and I believe it's true for most of the personnel in the building, decisions are made on a day-to-day basis, whether it's, do I want to pull this person over and write a ticket, to do I want to spend this money or get this grant or create this unit or change the patrol map. Hopefully those decisions are at least coming in part from a desire to do right by the community that we serve, because most of us live here and we're part of that community.
Yeah.
Right.
You've lived here your whole life.
Yeah.
I live here. I love it. You really have a hand in being invested in where you are in your community when you live there. Very different from where I came from. I don't know that I loved it, but I don't think I was very invested in it. I didn't grow up there. So, okay, you were in the Coast Guard, correct?
Yes. I did 8 years, a little over 8 years, 8 years and like 2 months, 3 months.
I know there's one particular scenario or story that Mercedes has tried to tell me about.
Yes. I'm going to start it, but I need you to go over all the details.
Okay.
You said, speaking of mastermind things, that you were in the Coast Guard and you came up with this theory on how 3 Special Forces guys can take over a cruise ship by themselves.
I think I know where you're going, and that's kind of right.
All right. What's the real deal here?
All right. So let me give you a little bit of background on my Coast Guard career so that this makes sense. I enlisted in the Coast Guard in 99, I think it was. So a bunch of years ago now.
I was 4.
Yeah, a bunch of years ago now. I had a lot less gray hair. And I went in as a quartermaster, which in the Coast Guard, that's a navigator. So I learned how to do celestial navigation and GPS and LORAN and that kind of thing, and shipped out to a fleet. In fact, my first assignment outside of all the training was in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was like a World War II era boat, but I have a lot of very fond memories of my tour there. While serving as a navigator there, doing just normal Coast Guard stuff, I got involved and interested in the law enforcement mission of the Coast Guard. So I got certified to serve as a boarding team member, which is almost like being a police officer, if that makes sense, right? I could wear the gun belt and did all my defensive tactics and stuff, and went and served, on boardings. We went and did inspections on boats and fisheries, that kind of thing. Well, my interest in that led to being selected for an assignment at Pacific Area TACLET. The closest corollary to something like this here at Cape PD would be kind of like joining the SWAT team, I guess. My initial training involved going with a team to an area in the Caribbean or the Eastern Pacific somewhere and trying to identify people that were smuggling drugs on like fishing boats or sailboats or whatever, and then conducting law enforcement boardings on that, looking for the drugs, right? During that time frame, my unit specifically, PAC Area TACLET, was tapped to provide specialized training to other agencies, right? We worked with some of the sheriff's departments down there, some federal agencies, and one of which was the FBI's hostage rescue team. They wanted some training on what to do if they were called to conduct an operation, a rescue mission, a SWAT type of mission on a cruise ship. My teams had trained to deal with tankers and cargo ships and all kinds of things because they were sending us all over the globe. We were trying to take down boats that were involved in smuggling oil out of Iraq back before the war, and so they came to us, and we put together about a week-long training or so out of the port of LA. At one point, we managed to get a cruise ship that was there for a resupply for a couple of days, and the government managed to work it out so we could have it for a day and a half or something to practice on it.
That's cool.
That had to be fun.
The crew was still working with no passengers or customers on board. They were turning over, had some inspections or something to do, but they were turning over. They were going to be going to sea with passengers in a few days. So we went through the training scenario, which involves a little bit of classroom, a lot of hands-on, right? How do we climb on board? How do we, from a boat, from caving ladders, from a helicopter, whatever. And once you get on board, what do you do? Well, the HRT with the FBI is a very highly trained, highly specialized team. If you're not familiar with them, they're kind of like the SWAT team for the FBI, and their primary mission, at least started out with sort of a counterterrorism, and they're called the hostage rescue team for a reason. Very, very well trained. Well, they're used to dealing with buildings, like how do you pull someone out of a high rise in downtown, DC, for instance, or New York. So they looked at the cruise ship like it was just a big high rise building, a hotel or something, and my team was used to going on board these large vessels. The tactics we used in the Coast Guard required only a handful of people, and you really only need 3 or 4 people to control a ship, a 1,000-foot-long cruise ship. You need 3 or 4 people to take total control of it. You need a lot more if you want to deal with all of the people on board. Even a large vessel, there's controls in the engine room, and there's controls on the bridge. And if you own those 2 things, you're in control of what the boat does and where it goes. And then you can deal with the people and whatever other threat is there as you get more resources available. Well, the HRT guys, we tried to train them on how to control the vessel, how to do room clearing, and how to navigate around the inside of a boat, that kind of thing. The threats are different because the systems on a ship can be exposed, and you can't use certain weapons or certain tactics because you can create a bigger problem than you had before you got there, for instance. And the places where the threats come from and people can hide is different than in a building. So at the end of all of that training, one of the after action discussion points was that the HRT guys, were grateful for the training, but basically said, we're never going to do this with, a normal deployment team. Because at the time, at least, their actual team was, a few hundred people, but when they deployed, it was only one group of it, right? Like one part of that team. So like a squad, think of it in that terms, where we felt comfortable going on with 8 guys and we can take control of that. I mean, 8 guys was a win, right? Because that's more than we needed. It really made them very nervous and uncomfortable to have less than what, a couple hundred people to control that, because they were thinking in terms of a regular building and not in a maritime environment where things are just different.
Right.
And it was eye-opening for me, because in the Coast Guard, we thought we were super cool and had all this great training, and that made us think, are we doing it right, or what are we missing here that maybe those guys are, because we looked up to those guys, So it was kind of neat. That role reversal was neat, because they were looking at us like, you guys are crazy. There's no way we could do what you do. But in my mind, it was like, wow, you guys are the FBI's HRT. You guys are one of the most premier teams in the country. Like, I don't know if I'm good enough to join your team, and you're telling me that what I do is better than what you do. It was a very confusing moment for me. So.
That's pretty cool, though. That has to feel pretty cool. I might do a little, brush my shoulders off.
Well, I can't say there wasn't some bragging and some partying by the team members. My team members after that. But
there you go.
But
just the Coast Guard creating waves.
Creating waves. I see what you did there.
I'm done. We're done.
We have to get one dad joke in per episode, Well, we've gotten plenty actually this episode so far.
Usually I hold back, but I just,
She went all in.
When I see an opportunity, it's got to happen. So is there anything else?
Getting me hooked up to a microphone is a huge win. I'm not a very public kind of person. I don't generally talk about a lot of these things. So.
Well, we're grateful to have you. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, it was awesome. Everyone's a lot smarter now after watching you, so we'll take that as a win.
Or bored out of their minds listening to me talk.
No, never.
No. They'll be inspired to paint the Wallaces now.
Oh, boy.
I really hope.
All right. We'll see you next time.
I appreciate it. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cape Copcast, where we dive into the heart of the Cape Coral Police Department safety initiatives, community relations, and the insightful stories of different officers that make up our department.
Please like and share our podcast. If you have feedback, you can email capepdpao@capecoral.gov. And remember to follow us on social media. Our handle is @CapePD on all major platforms. Stay safe, stay Cape.